Good morning, everyone, and welcome to my live demonstration of my hybrid real-time network performance monitoring and observability model using Nagios. To begin, as you can see, I've loaded up my Nagios server that's run as a web graphical user interface. And here you can see all the general pages, home documentation, the current statuses, tactical overview, map, hosts, services, host groups, service groups, problems. You can see also reports, availability, trends, alerts, event logs, and system. To start off with, we're gonna move on to the host page, and as you can see, there are three hosts. The local host, which is the machine that my Nagios server is currently running on, as well as two client machines. I have one Linux environment, which is my Ubuntu machine, and one Windows environment, which is my Windows machine. To add these hosts, what I had to do was create configuration files such as my Linux hosts, my Linux services, my Windows host, and my Windows services, which as you can see are logged onto my main Nagios configuration file. Here, as you can see, I created a brand new configuration file called Linux host.cfg. Here you can see the define host coding that I've added, which states my Linux server, the machine, the host name, the alias, the address, which is the machine IP address that my Nagios server is running on, as well as the defined host group names. Here you can also see I've created a same configuration file, but this time for my Windows host. Here you can see the defined host, the check period, the check interval, the retry interval, the max attempts, notification periods, notification intervals, options, notifications enable, contact group, the defined host, which is the name of my Windows machine that I've given, the IP address of my Windows machine, and here I will explain later on, but this here is my NCPA, my token, the port, and the information that I want my commands to run on my Windows machine, and also the defined host groups. Now my Nagios server is used as a state-based monitoring, which monitors the states of my client machines as well as my local host machine. As you can see, status up for my local host, status up for my Ubuntu machine, and status down for my Windows machine with an error, which we will solve as an actual demonstration. Now moving over, we move on to the service page. Here you can see the local host, the Ubuntu machine, and the Windows machine, as well as all the services that my Nagios monitoring server checks. So as you can see here, for example, my Linux client machine, there are service checks such as CPU checks, load, memory, processes, root partition, swap, uptime, users, and zombie processes. Here you can see the statuses shown. So you have some that are okay, some that are warning, and some that are unknown. Here it gives you the status information of them, as you can see. Now I added these services by going over and creating a Linux service configuration file. Here I defined all the services I wanted, the use, the description such as root partition, and because this is my Linux services, my Linux machine uses something called NRPE, which is Nagios Remote Plugin Executor, which is like a plugin agent that does all the checks for me, and these are the different checks it does. And here I've defined the services I want for my Linux machine, such as load, CPU, memory, swap time, uptime, users, and processes. Now, as you can see, I also have what is similar to an NRPE, but this time for my Windows client machine, I use what is known as a NCPA, Nagios Cross-Platform Agent, which is also a plugin agent, but for other platforms such as Windows, as you can see running in my processes. And here I also create a Windows service configuration file. I've defined all the services such as CPU usage, memory usage, this check. Okay, moving on, we are moving on to another tool that my hybrid monitoring solution that I've implemented with Nagios to work in sync. And here I've used Prometheus. Now Prometheus acts as my service monitoring. It's metric based. So here, as you can see, I've added my Linux machines and my Windows machines, and as you can see, the state up and state down. Here, as you can see, is my Prometheus configuration file, which is in YAML. Here I've done my global configurations where I have my Prometheus server running script intervals every 10 seconds. I have implemented this to complement my Nagios server, which scrapes metrics maybe every 5 to 10, 15 minutes. But Prometheus is even more precise and scrapes intervals at every 10 seconds, which is crucial for network performance monitoring, as any second can be detrimental and have a catastrophic impact on systems and services, and can be the reason you save your system. Here, as you can see, my Prometheus configuration file, I've also added my targets such as my local host, as you can see here, as well as my Linux client machine with the IP address and the port number, and I've also added a separate one for my Windows with its IP address here. As you can see here, I can also do querying, where for example I can look at the total CPU cycles per second, and I can execute this and it will give me a list of results. Now moving on to a key feature that I've implemented in my hybrid monitoring solution. I've implemented an alerting through Prometheus, a key feature known as Alert Manager. Here, as you can see, I have also configured my alerting, my targets, and also the rules, and create a separate alert configuration file here. Here I've created an alert manager configuration file for SMTP auth for email notification, and I've put my personal Gmail in here under receiver. As you can see, here is an example of all the email notification alerts I've been receiving from Alert Manager. I've also created a separate alerts configuration file for basic alerts, instance down, severity critical. So if a state or a system, so one of my client machines were to go down or to go offline, this is the alert I would get, as I've shown you here. Now moving on, another key tool that my hybrid solution brings forward is what's called Grafana. Now this is used for converting raw collected performance metrics and data from my Nagios, from my Prometheus, using Node Exporter as a data collection. And what this does is it converts raw numerical data into visual dashboards, as shown here. This is an example of my Linux client machine. Here you can see the CPU busy percentage, you can see the system load over all the CPU cores, you can see the RAM usage, you can see the swap space currently used by the system, and the root. This provides deeper and more rich insight into your system rather than just numbers in forms of line graphs and in form of bar charts, which I believe to be user friendly and more easily readable. Here you can see the system processes. You can also see the storage disks. You can see the disks, what disks, and the input output per second. Furthermore, you can also analyze network traffic. For example, here is an Ethernet interface card, and you can see the amount of packets sent per second, the minimum and the maximum, and the average. Now, by combining Nagios, Prometheus, and Grafana all into one, this creates a hybrid gold standard monitoring stack, which provides full visibility into system and network performances.